Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Bruce Adams, and we have, from the very start of the Bethesda Community Baseball Club and the Big Train, we've had an annual holiday event with an auction. The first 13 raised $600,000 for youth fields that we fixed up from Germantown to Anacostia. So now with the revived Bethesda Community Baseball Club, we thought we'd start this, and I know you're all incredibly happy that I picked this lovely warm day to bring this back. So I deserve all the credit for the fact that we're freezing. So anyhow, thank you for being here. Chris Rogers, our very hardworking general manager, is going to briefly talk to you about the auction, and then we're going to move into the rest of the program. Chris.
Yeah. Thank you guys all for coming out. We're really excited to have you here. A little different weather than we're used to hosting you all for in the summer, but I appreciate you being here, supporting us, supporting our friends at Catalyst Hot Dogs. Yeah, let's get that round of applause. Chris, also want to give a shout out to everyone who's sponsored this auction, from our home run sponsors all the way up to the Leadership Diamond. We wouldn't be able to do this without you.
And Lafayette is here.
Yes, Lafayette Federal Credit Union is over there next to the Catalyst Hot Dogs truck. Go stop by and say hi to them at some point this evening. But yeah, one of the main reasons we're here is for our week-long holiday auction. Bidding opened this past Thursday and will run through this coming Tuesday, November 16th at 10 p.m. We've got more than 60 really cool items online, everything from signed Nats and Orioles gear to some really one-of-a-kind Big Train memorabilia, a lot of sports experiences, artwork, restaurant gift certificates, wine, this beautiful handmade wooden flower arrangement. So probably 15 or so of our favorite items are out here on display. You can walk down the line here and see all of them. Each one has its own QR code that you can scan with your phone, and that'll take you directly to the link to bid on that specific item online. There's also a QR code at the very end that you can scan that will take you through the whole auction with all 65 items. So really encourage you to check that out. Walk down this line if you haven't already at some point and just see some of the really fantastic items that we have. And thanks for supporting us, and bidding runs through 10 p.m. on Tuesday.
Good job. Yeah. Chris, and where's Ramin? Ramin's in the back. Ramin and Chris have been working really hard on this auction, so please support that. So our headliner today is Toby Mendez. After I met with Maury Povich and talked to him about the idea of his dad, Shirley, interviewing Walter in a bronze sculpture, he was very excited about the idea. And then I thought, I got to find somebody who knows how to do this. And I didn't really know how to do that. And I went on the web, and there in just north of Frederick, Maryland, was the guy who sculpted my Birdland Heroes at Camden Yards. And I love those sculptures. And I go like, this guy's right near here. This is incredible. I got to talk to this guy. And Toby is, and then I learned about Thurgood Marshall and B.B. King and the teammates at Fenway and Yastrzemski and Nolan Ryan and realized this beautiful portfolio of civil rights giants and sports superstars. And I thought, Toby is the guy. And he has been such an absolute delight to work with. The family, Hank Thomas representing the Johnson family and Maury representing the Povich family, spent hours with Toby, and he'll explain the process. But I was sitting there for those hours, and it was like, no, fix the chin a little, no, fix the chin a little, no, you got to do it again a little more. Endlessly patient and just a beautiful human being. So I give you Toby Mendez, who did these wonderful sculptures.
Thank you very much. I'm kind of soft-spoken, so I'll yell at you for a little bit. But usually when people Google me, they are surprised I'm still alive. I think sculptors should look like Moses or something like that. And so Bruce sent me an email. I want to say it was a year and a half ago, more or less.
More.
Yeah, and I got the email, and he was surprised I responded like within 5 minutes. And we had an exchange of probably 20 or more emails back and forth talking about how we might do it. Shirley Povich first came to my attention in the Ken Burns series on baseball.
Yeah.
You know, he was one of the voices. You know, and his name would keep popping up, Ken Burns series on World War II. Again, you know, he was a war correspondent. And, you know, and I learned about his kind of push to prod and provoke Major League Baseball to mine into the Negro Leagues to bring in that talent. And anyway, that just really stuck out to me. So that's why I responded very quickly. My background, I started sculpting when I was a kid. I didn't know how I was going to make a living at it. My dad took me to a sports art show that was at the National the National Portrait Gallery, Museum of American Art. And I thought that would be kind of cool if I could be like an illustrator for Sports Illustrated. And then I saw sculpture, and I thought, you know, as a 14-year-old kid, I thought maybe that could be a career. I mean, very naive. And one of the very early sculptures I did was of Bjorn Borg, portrait head. And you know, that was the period when I decided to become a sculptor, that I wanted to do this as a career. The first commission that I took on right out of art school was for the U.S. Navy Memorial in D.C., right on Pennsylvania Avenue. And that training, working for the Navy Memorial, prepared me for everything that came after. Research was incredibly important. The Navy had gone through almost a dozen sculptors that they had just let go. And I was like, oh gosh. And I was like 25, you know. And I was asking, you know, what's going on? You know, why are they getting fired? And a lot of it was they couldn't back up they couldn't support the material that they were doing. And so I got from the Navy Memorial, right from their archives, dated to the date photos from the Korean War for everything that I was sculpting. And I found myself in front of the Surgeon General of the U.S. Navy Memorial. And I was waiting for the guy that hired me to have my back. And I was left out on a limb. And I just pulled out my research. And I got through, I was the first one to get through review. I did Navy Medical Corps. And then a couple of years later, I won the Oyster Tonga, which is in Solomons, Maryland, which is a large fountain of the Chesapeake watermen. And then a couple of years after that, I won the national competition for the Thurgood Marshall. I was probably about 32 years old when I won Thurgood Marshall. And a lot of it had to do with that research. When I was doing Thurgood Marshall, the Texas Rangers were looking for someone to do a sculpture of Nolan Ryan. And this is pre-internet. This is like 1996. And usually my pattern back then was I would go to Walden Bookstore. I'd get the clerk to go on the computer to find any book that would have the complete collection of photos of Nolan Ryan. And I'd have it FedEx. And, you know, I was notified on a Tuesday. On Thursday, they were flying me down to Texas. And the following week, I didn't realize that the general manager of the Rangers came to my studio and hired me because I did Thurgood Marshall. So now that's where my sports and civil rights kind of come together in my career. And you think you go right from another sports, you know, from a sports subject to another one. But I think of myself as kind of like a character actor who's trying to find a good role. And you don't want to get pigeonholed. You know, you want to do, I do veterans memorials, I do sports, I do civil rights. I'm about ready to do Clara Barton for Hagerstown. So my interests are kind of all over the place. If you look at my website, you'll see I've done over 40 public monuments around the country, and a fair amount of civil rights, fair amount of sports. But from doing Nolan Ryan to doing the Baltimore Orioles, I was first hired by the Boston Red Sox to do the teammate sculpture. Ted Williams, Bobby Dorr, Johnny Pesky, and Don DiMaggio. And they were considering several sculptors. BWI renamed itself the Thurgood Marshall. The arts consultant for that project is the art consultant for the Red Sox. And she asked me, have you ever done sports? I'm like, Nolan Ryan. She had no idea. So within a week, I was flying up to Boston. And you have to know, I grew up overseas as a child, so I didn't come into watching Major League Baseball until I was a teenager. My best friend was from New England, and he was a Red Sox fan. So I saw all of his baseball cards on the Red Sox. This is the late 1970s. So when I went to go see the Orioles play, it was always to see the Boston Red Sox. So the players, at that time, like Jim Rice, et cetera, and so on. So to be hired by the Red Sox, to be sitting in the offices at Fenway, hearing all the chatter of management around me of last night's game, going through the archives, and then being asked, you want to go down and meet Johnny Pesky? And we're sure. And what's funny is if you ask me statistics on baseball, I draw a blank. I like stories. I like the history of, I like stories, and I'm not a stats person. On the flight up, I read the book Teammates. And so Pesky sees that I have it in my hand. We're telling him that I'm actually a scholar at some college, and I'm doing an article on the Teammates, because it was a surprise I'm doing the sculpture, right? And he sees the book in my hand, and he says, that's a great book, and he was a hell of a guy, meaning Ted Williams. And I said, that it is a hell of a book. And he said, what year did Ted Williams hit 400? And I read the book on the way up. And so I said, don't you remember, it's the year before you came up to the majors? And he said, that's right. And so now he's starting to talk to me. And I had researched Willie Mays, because I was being considered to do Willie Mays. And in that book on Willie Mays, he talked about the different wind characteristics of each ballpark. And so I asked Pesky, I understand this from learning about Willie Mays, that there's different characteristics. What's different about Fenway? He said, you see the American flag, you see which way it's blowing. I said, yeah. He said, this is a good night for Ted Williams. I thought, that's pretty cool. He was sitting there doing notes on somebody they were bringing up from the minors who's going to fill in to play either second base or shortstop. And he was taking notes, and I was asking him, what do you see? What is he doing? He said, I don't like how he's flipping the ball to the second baseman. He's doing it blindly. He's not looking at him. And I said, that's really cool. So anyway, that was my experience with the Red Sox. From working on the Red Sox, the architect redoing Fenway was Janet Marie Smith, who's responsible for Camden Yards. And so she hired me to work for the Orioles. And what's funny is I have a collector who for years has told me that I should go and talk to the Orioles about doing Cal Ripken. Like, that's how you get a job, And so now I'm being hired to do Cal Ripken and to do all of their Hall of Famers. And Bruce had mentioned a couple things that stuck out to him. I got to sit down for an afternoon with Brooks Robinson. I always do like a small, like a 2-foot version of everything that I do. And I did that for this project here. And so I'm sitting with Brooks Robinson working on a sculpture in his dining room. And I was told on the way over there, don't expect that we're going to be with Brooks for very long. This is a courtesy. And he didn't get along with Angelos. And so I'm asking, so why didn't he get along with Angelos? And anyway, ask me that like in a couple of years, I'll tell you. So I'm thinking we're going to be there for 15 minutes, and we're sitting there for hours. And Brooks is interviewing me while I'm sculpting. He's going through my book of all of my work, and his wife is asking me about all of my projects. And when I do a project like this, I never ask for an autograph or anything like that. It's just business. So as I'm leaving, I'm autographing my book for Brooks, and he's thrilled because the sculpture that's in front of Pickles is about ready to be done, and he's practicing his speech with me. And it's like, this is Brooks Robinson, you know, and I'm trying to focus. And the only change that he asked on his sculpture was for me to mess up his hair. So I'm messing up his hair in the clay as I'm working with them. And he's telling me how he got 2 holes in one on the golf course, and I'm hearing each story of this and so on. And it was fantastic. You know, this 20-minute meeting was a couple hours. And it was just because Brooks is Brooks. The other meeting, I met all 6 players and sat with them. And one of the meetings was with Jim Palmer. And originally, Jim Palmer's sculpture was going to be his pitch, where he's following through on his pitch. I was concerned about doing the sculpture of him with the high kick, where he's just on one leg and being able to support that. You know, you have to be concerned about the 200-pound fan who's going to jump up on it when they win the World Series. And so, you know, I got assurance from an engineer we could get enough stainless steel in there for the drunk, you know, that would be handing on. And so I did the sculpture of Jim Palmer, and they're just telling Jim Palmer that there's going to be this 8-foot sculpture of him. So he's on a high coming into this meeting. And they tell him his dedication date is on this date. And he says, well, I have a conflict, I can't be there. And they say, well, we've already printed the tickets for the game with your photo on the tickets. You've got to be there. And he's like, And he comes in and he sees his 2-foot model in the pose. And he's looking at it, he said, and I said, I want you to review it for everything, the mechanics, you know, every detail, it's got to be right. And he says, my body, the curvature of his back is like a letter C. He said it needs to be more like a letter L. And so I grabbed the clay and I pull it straight, and he didn't realize it was clay, and that I could do that. And of course it puts a big crack in his stomach when I do that, and I'm filling that. And he says, my left leg needs to be over more across the center of my body, so I move that over. And I said, how about the grip of the baseball? He said, a little more air in there, it needs to be a little more loose. And I asked, okay, what pitch are you throwing? And he says, cross-seam fastball. So if you look at it, all of the stitching, everything's in the right place on the baseball, the air is in there. You know, his back is exactly where it needs to be. He wanted his arm a little bit more across the center, so I did that. And then as he's leaving, he's on the phone with his wife saying, we've got to cancel that other event. So, Earl Weaver, which we used to love watching Earl Weaver because he always got angry at the umpire, and he was the most entertaining part of the game. And now I'm being criticized by Earl Weaver. You know, he's talking to me now as I'm working with him, and he's calling me Tobes. And on his, if you look at the detail of it, you'll notice that his jersey is unbuttoned down to here because he needs access to his cigarettes. Which, if you really look at it, under the number 4, you can see the outline of his cigarette pack is in there. And, you know, details like that, just, you know, working with him, making sure that, you know, if Cal Ripken has the period glove for when he's depicted, making sure Jim Palmer's glove. If you look at the glove that Walter Johnson has, you know, I do a Google search and find out what gloves came up at auction, what year, and try to make sure I get the right year of the right glove. The shoes are really important. You know, getting all of those details. If they layer their socks, I want to make sure that the bump of the sock that's underneath is there. You know, it's like when I work with Nolan Ryan. I asked Nolan Ryan, what would a real collector know about your uniform or what you're wearing that most people wouldn't know? He said, well, if you look at a promo picture, It's done in the studio. I'm wearing a Russell jersey and it has an R on it. But when I'm playing in a game, I'm wearing a Goodman, and there's no letter R on it. He had arrangements with whoever, and making sure, I said, I want to make sure your glove is right and that your spikes are right. So he sent me his glove. And then for his spikes, he had Nike make up a pair of shoes and sent them to me. On a pitcher's toe, on their follow-through toe, the foot that they drag has an extra layer of leather called the pitcher's toe. He wanted that right, things like that, And so with Maury, I asked, okay, what was your dad's height? What was his weight? And we had to figure out what year this was going to be. We decided on 1927. So I'm looking at 1927 for Walter Johnson, his uniform. Sometimes they have a different patch on, the W on the hat, things like that. So if you look at the shield that's on both shoulders, I made sure that showed up in photographs from that year. And I look in the archives to figure out that date has to be there so that we could back it up. Hank Thomas wrote the best book on Walter Johnson, which is here for auction. And I knew he would care about those things. We talked about the stripes on Walter Johnson socks, which ones to do. And I have to pick the ones that will work in sculpture. So, color, I can't do color. So, we do that. Make sure the hat's right, the gloves right, the shoes are period appropriate. I know when I did Ted Williams, again, I looked at auctions of what shoes came up, and then I go on eBay and I find those shoes from, in Ted's case, 1941, 42, in this case, trying to find shoes of that period. Just going through everything. And then with Maury said his dad was an impeccable dresser. So I go through fashion, men's, 1927, and I find something that's very similar to the photo of Shirley Povich, where he's on the typewriter with his fedora looking up at you. And finding out from Maury that it's a Kavanaugh fedora. And then we worked on the brim size. That's one of the things that I was changing with him. And then I asked him about the shoes, and he said wingtips. And then I sent him big, photos of wingtips, which wingtips, and have him pick that out to make sure that it's right. This is everything that you go through. I think of it as like a house of cards. It has to be right. Most of you all are the generation that you would remember Barney Miller, one of my favorite shows from back in the 70s. And they caught a forger that was counterfeiting $5 bills. And they said, well, how did you get caught? He said, well, I put a leisure suit on Lincoln. And so I always think of that. You've got to get it right. People are going to know. The people who collect baseball are going to know. And so, that's very important. And the mechanics, everything's important like that. So that's what I go through.
Could you just quickly talk about the process from the little clay model?
Yeah. So I usually do a 2-foot scale. So in this case, it's a 2-foot figure seated. The reason I work that scale is, one, it's large enough to get all of the detail, to get the portraiture right, and it's also easy to work on and change with the client and something I could transport. So the first step is, all my photos, everything, getting everything checked out with the client so there's no surprises. And then they sit down with me after I have the 2-foot version. And then I fine-tune the portrait with them looking. In Maury's case, he came in and we are assuming that Maury Povich is going to be there 3-4 hours, right? And he flew in private jet into Frederick. Bruce picked him up at the airport, brought him out to the studio. This is in the winter, like this past January. And Maury comes in and he has a really great eye. And, I really appreciate that because they could see something and see something's off, but they could also articulate what's off, which, a lot of times it's, the nightmare is there's something wrong. I don't know what it is, but it's just not right. And I have to start guessing what it could be, right? And so with Maury, he said the eyes are a little too low in the plane of the face. I'm like, okay. And so I sculpt them, start moving them up. And I kind of ease into it because you don't want to go too far and have to redo it. And so, you know, he's sitting down, we're chatting, and then I said, take a look, and he looks at him a little bit more. And so I moved the eyes up a little further into the eye socket. And he's like, that's it. I mean, it was within an hour. Yeah, it was within an hour. The only other thing, I think I changed the width of the brim on the fedora. In 1927, he wore a wider brim on the fedora, but he's known more for the shorter brim. And I could find, after the fact, like, you know, around that time, he also wore, you know, a more narrow fedora. And the other thing with fedoras is, you know, with Kavanaugh, I'm listening to, you know, YouTube things on the Kavanaugh hat. You know, just trying to, there's different levels of quality of fedoras. And, you know, I'm thinking, I got to sculpt the more expensive one because he cared about it. But we found Bruce and I found a wonderful photo of Babe Ruth walking with Walter Johnson. I think it was at a charitable event. And you could see in the background Shirley Povich following them. He's carrying his typewriter, and he's wearing a pair of wingtips, like a two-tone wingtips, the black and white ones or whatever. And he's got the fedora, everything, and it's just wonderful. So anyway, I do the 2-foot. Then once that's approved, I have to go to full scale. I get that scanned by laser. And actually, instead of having it printed, they cut it with a CNC machine, which is basically a big machine with a drill bit. They cut it into foam, whatever scale I want it. So I get it life-size back in foam, and I bring it in my studio, and then over top of that, I do a very, very thin layer of clay to get back all the life and texture that's missed by the computer. And then, in this case, I sent you all videos, and they reviewed it in videos. There weren't any changes. We just went I sent that right to the foundry. And that was, I want to say that was around May. And then I had the bronzes, I think, July, August. And then we stored them until baseball season was over.
And then we put them in.
Yeah.
Toby, thank you so
Well,
much
thank you.
for the fabulous job you did and insight into your work. Where's Sal? Sal. Hey, let's hear it for Sal. I said Sal's name. Sal won another championship this year, and he's going to tell you about it, and then he's going to tell you about how he's going to win next year's championship. Sal.
Thank you, Bruce. Amazing stories on the sculptures and everything. That's just mind-boggling to have the patience to do that. So thank you for doing that for the community. First, before we get started, I just want to thank the people, the board members, my staff, G, Chris, Patrick, everyone, Amy, and Becky and Rachel. I mean, without you guys and John, COVID was challenging. You know, I lived it at school, had to deal with it with the board, deal with it with Bruce and Chris. It was challenging. But to get to the point of June 1st of 2021 this past summer was just a joy for me, because having a summer off of baseball, well, kind of summer off of baseball, was a struggle, because I really enjoy the community here and I really enjoy coaching. So special thanks to everybody and Bruce for doing that. But there's one special thanks I want to say. She's a mother, she's a wife, and she's a grandmother. And without this lady, Peggy, stand up. Where's Peggy? She's going to be mad at me. She's my biggest fan. I love her. But Peggy, thank you for allowing Bruce to do what he does, because God bless you. You had to live with him. No, but thank you, Peggy, seriously, because Bruce is amazing in what he does. So the season, we got there, we started, and I'm panicking because guys are in regionals, players are in super regionals. How are we going to field a team? What are we going to do? And just happened we signed some extra temp contracts, some extra players, and we were able to field a team. We got off to a good start. We had an amazing group of players. Amazing. I just can't say enough. When I go to recruit, people are like, well, what are you looking for? Well, what is it in a player you're looking for? And I just tell them, first and foremost, I want a good kid. I want a good young man that I know that's going to represent us in the way we want him to. It's not going to be disrespectful to their university. and going to play hard in between the lines. And if they do that and they come here, we'll be successful. There's been times we haven't had the best players, but we've had a lot of success because the expectation is there and they understand. So it was a great season. We're ups and downs as always in summer baseball. I don't believe we try to tell the players not to lose more than 2 games in a row. We got to stop the bleeding when we can. We accomplished that goal this summer. We didn't lose more than 2 games in a row. And our goal was to win the regular season, put us in position for the championship series, and then the next goal was to win the championship series with all the resources and everything. With everyone in here, it happened, and it was an exciting season. So I'm looking forward to this summer. This summer, recruiting is done. I've recruited, I would say, a pretty good team. A lot of the same universities that I've dealt with before, because once again, I know what I'm going to get when they come here. I'm excited. We still have a lot more work to do with collecting a few contracts, but we'll get that done. But I'm looking forward to this summer and having another successful summer. But like always, before I finish, there's a young man. Where's Owen? Come here, Owen, real quick.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Yeah.
come here, Owen. So at the end of every game, and I'll answer questions so everyone has it. At the end of every game, this young man has always something to say. And Owen, I would like you, and I'll put you on the spot, right? I would like you to tell everybody what was the most memorable thing this summer that you witnessed. And we appreciate what you've done. Go ahead, Owen.
The most memorable thing this year is we were playing the Alexandria Aces at this field. We were down by a couple runs, down by a lot. I don't know how many, but Kemp Alderman, number 33, strides to the plate, walk-off grand slam, right field. One of the most memorable moments to me.
Well, we signed him for another year, so thanks, Owen. That was
You got an
pretty good.
extension?
You got an extension, right?
No.
No? Did your dad negotiate for you? Your dad negotiated
He wants to know if
contract?
you're coming back next summer.
You coming back? All right.
Yeah, he's coming back. That's what we wanted to hear. Sal, stay up here. Coach G. So one of the things that I have the most fun with is giving out the Randy Schools Big Train Outstanding Service Awards. We've got 5 of them tonight. I talked to Randy today. He's on the Eastern Shore now, so he's not with us as much. But Randy was the Booster Club president from the very beginning of Big Train until he retired to the Eastern Shore, and we named this nobody in Bethesda, not just for Big Train baseball, but for the Chamber of Commerce, for NIH, just for Bethesda generally. Nobody is more appreciated and did more than Randy Schools, and so we're glad to have his name on this award. So since Sal's up here, we're going to start with Coach G. Now, usually we give these to staff people as they're leaving. We don't want Coach G to be leaving, but for some of the staff people, they have done such a fantastic job, and not just on the field at the games, but the summer camp, running our summer camp, which is critically important to the financial stability of our organization. Coach G deserves this award. Now, this is not a retirement award. This is a continue award. So Brenda's going to take a picture. Sal's going to get in the picture. And then Sal is going to say something about Coach G. Snap a few. Right, there we go. Okay. So Sal, what do you got to say before Coach G he's going to respond to you.
He's going to speak too. I've known Coach G for years. We competed in the Clark Griffith League, played against each other growing up in the old Clark Griffith League. What I like about G is his loyalty. He's very loyal, and he's one of the most hardworking individuals I've been ever associated with. I know when things get tough, and it does in the summer, and I get frustrated with the guys, and it's hot, I know I can count on him to pick me up or pick the guys up. And he's one of the most loyal employees, people, baseball knowledge, everything that I ever met. And he knows When I go, he goes. So we're here a while. So, but gee, I appreciate everything you do. You do a wonderful, wonderful job. Although he did beat me one time, and I can't believe this happened. Bases loaded. 2004, Madison High School. He's coaching. 2 outs. Who would squeeze? But Coach G did. Coach G did, and he beat us.
All right. Coach, you're on.
Sal, thanks for the kind words. Appreciate it. I think I'm coming back, right? I don't know. Well, I was just, coming to Bethesda. I mean, first I want to thank Sal for having me aboard and asking me to come coach with Bethesda Big Train. And ever since I got here, folks has welcomed me as, just part of the family here at Big Train. The first guy I met was my buddy Adrian right here. He's sitting in the stands.
Cheers for Adrian.
And I go talk to Adrian, and ever since then we've kept an open communication. He texts me. He doesn't listen to me all the time, but he don't listen to anyone most of the time. But he's the first guy I met. He sits in the same seat every game, and I just happened to walk by. At first, I asked him was he okay because his parents wasn't with him, but he said he was fine, and we went on from there and so forth, so on, and we stayed in connection. We communicate all the time. Yes, it's great parents there that trust me with Adrian when we hang out and so forth. But thank you for the award. Thank everybody for welcoming me to the Big Train baseball family.
Thank you for your service. And ever since Adrian's been sitting in that seat, they've won championships. Is that correct? Okay, stay in the seat. All right. I'm going to go with John Daniel next. Yeah. John Daniel. Yeah. John Daniel's nearly as old as I am, and he has been to I think he's been to as many, if not more, Big Train home games than I have over these 20-some years. Such a loyal fan. He's donated, I think, didn't you put in this auction the T-shirt from the original inaugural game in 1999? And then when we brought the Big Train back, it made sense to involve John. And we said we were going to bring the fun back to Povich Field. But what I asked John to do was mostly the not fun jobs. Somebody to bring the fun back for all of us. You need a treasurer. You need somebody who cashes all the checks, who writes all the checks, who keeps everything honest, who does all the paperwork, who goes to the state of Maryland and the county and everybody and the IRS and keeps us straight. And John, amazingly, has kept us straight for 18 months. So I thought he deserved a Randy Scholes Award. Yeah. Put your Randy here. We're going to let you talk. Okay. So John, the floor is yours. Thank you. You are, I can't make you the fan of the century because that's Brian. But you are right up there as one of the all-time great Big Train fans. And thank you for the incredible work you've done on the board as our Secretary-Treasurer.
I'm glad to say that during my tenure, which is now maybe 15 months or so, that not one officer or employee or staff member of Big Train has gone to jail.
Thank you. Thank you, John. John has been a great fan. He's been a great help on the board. I should say that the award that people are giving is a smaller copy of a print that was done 20 years ago by the fabulous printmaker in Washington Grove, Joseph Craig English. It's what you see when you walk through the entrance. And Craig also did, Toby doesn't know this, but the Walter Johnson on the wall and the Shirley Povich on the front walls of Povich Field were also done by Craig. And Craig has this year again, he has actually put in the auction one of these frame versions. But it is a fabulous picture of what was going on our opening day game in 1999. So I want to give Toby, who you've just met, this award for this fabulous sculpture that he's done. So you've just done such a beautiful addition. We're proud of this wonderful field that we have, and our big train baseball, and our small town charm and big league talent that we give the public. But you have graced us with just an extraordinary set of sculptures. I think I describe this to people as we've got, what is big train baseball at Povich Field? Well, it's sort of a small version of minor league baseball. This is a big league sculpture, and thank you. Dick Leggin, he's in the house. He's got a fan club here. Where is he? There he is. So here's how Dick got involved. John Orsman, who my partner in raising the money for all this, decided in 1998 that we needed a picture of what we were trying to sell people as we asked them for contributions to build Povich Field. So he said, well, Dick can do this. And our architect had drawn these beautiful plans, but the architect couldn't draw what it was going to look like. Dick somehow looked at these set of plans and drew, and it's upstairs in the press box. He drew exactly what was in those plans before this was even done. So when we thought up the idea of this sculpture, I thought, well, I need Dick to give me a little sketch of Shirley interviewing Walter that I can take around so I can raise the money for this. That little idea of a little sketch turned into, I'm going to maybe steal one of your lines, but after working with the Parks Department for a few months and all the demands they had, Dick was very calm, and he kept at it, and despite that I asked him just for this little sketch, he was doing all the site work, and he said, do they think we're building a 6-story garage? I mean, that was the level of detail that they were putting him through. So you, Dick, deserve a Randy Scholes Award. Brenda is, thank you. So Dick and his colleagues did just an absolutely fabulous job. Parks put you through the ringer. You're on.
That was the easy part.
You're on.
Well, it was just so great, Bruce. You get a call from Bruce. That's how it always starts, right? Because, Dick, you are the perfect guy for this project. So
I just didn't know, how involved it was going to
and
be.
how could you say no to this great, it was a brilliant idea, and we just loved what we did years and years ago, and to see this right here in Bethesda. So thank you, Bruce, for the vision, and thank you, Toby, for the fantastic sculpture. And this is, to our Washington icons of sports and character. Just say hello to my family. My wife, Lindsay, is back there, and the other, we're wearing our tribute fedoras.
Nice hat, right?
My sister, Dee Dee, my dear friends, Kip and Peg, and Tom and Louise. And Tom Tate, of course, is part of our team. So I was in charge of expanding the team, and Tom did the plantings and landscaping and donated all that. We had a great team of people.
And Dick, thank you for that. You brought Tom in, and you also brought Santo in, who did this beautiful wall.
Santo Seminara is a fantastic stonemason that we're working with on some of our houses right now, and he did a beautiful job, did he not? And then Walker Simpson did the concrete, and also put a plug. It was almost an all Landon School alumni crew.
John Orsman pointed that out to John Graham, the St. Albans guy in our group, right? Yeah. So Dick, thank you so much, everybody. Okay, Guy Brami. Guy's been here from the beginning. Guy, come here. He's so shy. Yeah. So Guy's with Gelberg Signs. So every sign you see, every letter you see, every plaque you see, every banner you see is done by Gelberg Signs. And Guy is a joy to work with. I'm always late, right? Yeah, always late.
I wasn't gonna say
you can. I'll say it. And I'm always asking, could you do it a little less expensively because we're a little nonprofit? And Guy is always there. And then I want to also say that out of this project came a Fields of Dreams after-school program in Anacostia that's beautiful. And Guy, for several years, you raised a lot of money for the Fields of Dreams program with golf tournament. So, Guy Brami, Delberg Signs. Tell everybody how great Delberg Signs is. And you did Nats Park, right?
That's right. Well, I just want to say, I'll keep it brief. And it struck me when I was listening to Toby, your attention to detail, which shows it's amazing. But it also made me realize that you two are cut from the same cloth. That the attention to detail in this park and in everything that you do, whether it's Fields of Dreams, Big Train, the field, it shows, and it's a pleasure to work with you. Thanks.
All right, thank you guys. Now let's see, Chris, go back to the auction. We're gonna end on the auction. We started with the auction. So this is how we raise the money to make sure we have a sound financial foundation for the next season, both for our community service work and for the baseball team. So pitch that auction.
Yeah, we've got Steven Strasburg signed jersey and Alex Ovechkin signed stick, the man who just passed Brett Hull to become 4th all-time in NHL goals. We have a really fantastic Albert Pujols signed baseball with some inscriptions of his career accomplishments. Frank Robinson signed ball. We've got some Big Train bobbleheads. The Big Train opening day package that Bruce touched on that John donated. We've got Roberto Clemente Cabernet Sauvignon. We've got a Woodford Reserve whiskey, Big Train team signed bat. So many other great things to check out online. You can scan all of these QR codes to bid on each individual item. But once you're on that page, you can find all of the other 60 plus items in this auction as well. So thank you for all your support. Thanks for coming out, and feel free to check out the items and mingle some more.
Or just go to the web page and all these items will be there. There's also Hank Thomas's book with Shirley Povich did the preface to, and it is a Shirley Povich autographed book. And they're not making any more of those. So thank you everybody for being here, for supporting Big Train, and get warm.